When a top AI research director leaves a company like Meta, especially during massive layoffs, you probably think you know the story. But this is so much more than a story about a layoff. It's really a look inside the mind of AI scientist Tian Yuandong, and it reveals some deep thinking on the entire future of artificial intelligence. Okay, let's dive right in. And boom, right away, the whole narrative gets flipped on its head. This wasn't some big surprise for him. For Tian Yuandong, the layoff wasn't really an endpoint. It was more like an accelerator, a push to make a change he was already planning. And that gives his perspective a unique kind of weight, you know? He's looking at the industry from the inside, but he was already on his way out.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with his personal story, then zoom way out to look at a huge industry trend. From there, we'll dive into the really juicy technical debates about the future of AI models, and we'll wrap up with his vision for what comes next.
So, just to really hammer this home, this wasn't a shock. Tian already felt a shift happening and was planning his next move. The layoff, in his own words, just accelerated this personal choice. And that's exactly why his insights on the industry are so critical to hear right now.
And that brings us to his first major point, which goes way beyond his own situation at Meta. He's seeing a fundamental trend that's reshaping the entire field of AI development.
So, here's the core idea. The very tools that we use to build AI are becoming so powerful, so automated, that they're actually reducing the need for the engineers who create them in the first place. It's kind of wild. The system is starting to run itself.
And what's really interesting here is how this process breaks down. I mean, it used to be that training a model required an engineer to basically be on call 24/7, ready to jump in and fix it when it crashed. But now, with all this amazing automation and these super robust systems, that kind of hands-on work is just becoming rarer. And the logical result of that, well, you just don't need as many people for pure execution anymore. And if you follow that trend to its ultimate conclusion, this is where you land. Tian suggests a future where these traditional corporate jobs, being hired by a big company to do a specific set of tasks, they might just become a thing of the past. Why? Because these powerful AI tools could empower a tiny team or even just one person to do what once took hundreds. So we've talked about how the process of building AI is changing, but what about the core philosophy behind it? This is where we go next, and it's where Tian gets really critical of the idea that's been dominating AI for years. He's asking the fundamental billion-dollar question. For the last few years, the entire industry has been obsessed with this one central idea, the scaling law. But he's asking, is this really the path to true intelligence, or is it just a dead end?
All right, let's quickly break this down. The scaling law is pretty simple. It's the belief that if you just throw exponentially more data and more computing power at a model, its performance will get predictably better. It's the brute force approach. And it has given us some incredibly powerful models, but Tian calls it a pessimistic future.
And this slide really shows us why he thinks that. He argues it's just not sustainable. I mean, we'd eventually use all the planet's energy just to train these things. But more importantly, it's not clever. It kind of assumes we can just buy our way to intelligence with more computers, instead of discovering more efficient algorithms, a smarter way to learn.
Okay, so if brute force scaling isn't the answer, then what is? Well, Tian points to a totally different approach, one that's all about the idea of active learning, mostly through a method called reinforcement learning.
He uses this fantastic analogy to explain the difference. Think of supervised fine-tuning, or SFT, as being like a student who's just passively listening to a lecture, memorizing facts from a fixed textbook. But reinforcement learning, RL, that's like the student who goes out into the world, experiments, fails, and learns by doing. They aren't just memorizing, they're developing real problem-solving skills. So, this is the crucial point. The magic of RL isn't just the algorithm itself, it's the data. By actively exploring, the model generates its own perfect, high-quality training data that's tailored specifically to the problem it's trying to solve. And that is a far more efficient way to learn than just scraping the entire internet. But even with these smarter learning methods like RL, there's still one component that AI is missing, and it's a really, really big one. It's the unique power of human intuition and insight. Tian brings up this staggering number. He points out that humans are about 1,000 times more data efficient than the AI models we have today. We can learn and generalize from just a tiny fraction of the data an LLM needs. And this quote explains that 1,000x gap perfectly. A human can see one or two examples of a problem and just get it. They grasp the fundamental essence. A model, on the other hand, needs thousands of examples just to get a blurry outline. That ability to see the essence is what he calls taste, and it's something machines still can't replicate.
He compares it to the self-driving car industry, and it's a great analogy. You know, we saw incredibly fast progress at the beginning, getting 99% of the way there. But that last 1%, handling all the tricky, unexpected, weird edge cases, has proven to be incredibly difficult. Why? Because it requires true human-like understanding. He argues that large language models are hitting a very similar wall. So let's put all this together, the automation of engineering, the limits of scaling, and this deep need for human insight. What does this all mean for the people who are actually trying to build our AI future? His advice is basically a call for independence. He warns people not to just chase the hot trends because the field moves way too fast. By the time you master something, the industry has already moved on. Instead, he says the most valuable asset you can have is your own unique perspective or research taste. It's about combining your personal passion with a strategic sense of where the future is really headed.
Ultimately, it's about creating your own roadmap. In a field that is changing constantly, the only compass you can really rely on is your own internal sense of direction and purpose.
And this leaves us with the big question he's now facing himself. As he plans his next adventure, he's grappling with this fundamental tension. Is the future in pure blue sky research labs, or is it in fast-moving, product-focused engineering teams? Or maybe is there a new model that can perfectly blend the two? Finding that balance, well, that might just be the key to unlocking AI's next chapter.